If there is one thing that every single audiophile on this planet can agree on, it is our mutual love for deep and meaningful bass. That's right, folks. No matter how the walls shake, the clothes rattle off our partner, or our rib cage cracks, we all love, and I mean love, that bottom of the barrel bass. So, in today's video, I wanted to do a quick rundown of how I dial in subwoofers, whether it's 1 sub, 2 subs, or 4. Yeah, that's right. 4 for the love of all things audiophile subwoofers. And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, that's exactly what we're going to do. Alright folks, the purpose of this video is to walk through a couple of not so common subwoofer placement techniques, and with the help of sound clips, I have a feeling you guys are going to appreciate how this all comes together. With the clips, it's my hope that this will be a little bit more interactive, and I'll be having my buddy Randy help me out to make this all happen. For those that don't know who the heck Randy is, one moment. All right, Randy, don't be rude. Say hello to my audiophile buddies. Sorry, he's camera shy. This fine-looking fella, who lovingly goes by Randy Neumann, is indeed a binaural dummy head. And yes, folks, in order to hear all of the spatial effects in these sound clips and get a better sense of what it's like being in the room, you must be wearing headphones. So, before we waste another second, grab yourself a nice pair of cans and let's chat about some of the gear that I'll be using in today's video. Now, I like to consider myself a fairly open-minded audiophile and even more a tolerant person when it comes to different ideas and methods of doing things. However, in this particular situation, I'm going to do my best to persuade you that you or I or anyone else, golden ears or not, cannot possibly accomplish what we're about to accomplish without some kind of measurement device. By all means, let the stubborn old school audiophiles go wild in the comments section, and that's totally fine. But for those who are looking to get the absolute best performance out of their setup, I'm sorry, or not so sorry, you're gonna need a little bit more help than just your ears. Number 1. We need a measurement microphone. Now, the mic that I use and I recommend for in-room measurements is the UMIC 1 by Mini DSP. This microphone right here, it's only 79 bucks and it comes with a calibration file, and it can be used with either Windows or Macs without an interface. With the mic being USB, it truly is plug and play, and it works seamlessly with the software that we're going to need, which of course leads me to number 2. REW, also known as Room EQ Wizard. This program is very powerful and it has a ton of options, but here is the thing that we all love about it. It's free. That's right. With a simple download to your PC or Mac, you are now armed with the tools that you need to not only knock out this guide straight out of the park, but you also have the ability to really learn a lot more about your room and why things sound the way that they sound. Last, and while this is not required, it is highly recommended and it will make life easy as you take your measurements. Get yourself a long USB cable that runs from your computer to your DAC. The one that I bought from Amazon is 20 feet long, and I use it all of the time when I am dialing in subwoofers and taking measurements for my reviews. Anyhow, grab one of these in the link down below, and trust me on this one, you will thank me later. And this does remind me, the FTC is cracking down on content creators, and it's easy to forget small details. So let's make sure we are being honest and upfront, and I will tell you now, any of the links that you are using down below, the Amazon links, they are affiliate links, and so if you decide to click on any of those links and purchase a cable or a microphone, I do get a small kickback, but it's at no additional cost to you. All right, with all of that out of the way and the gear that we need has been brought to light, let's take a moment and chat about the subwoofers we are going to be using today. When it comes to bass and new record day, this poor horse has been beaten and buried many years ago. Of course, we are talking about open baffle bass, and in my not so humble opinion, there is nothing on planet Earth that rivals the speed, articulation, and natural sound of open baffle offerings. Taking it a step further, these bad mother flowers, appropriately named Double Trouble from GR-Research, utilize a technology known as direct servo. Now, without getting into the weeds and staying on topic, I'll just say this. This technology, direct servo, takes dipole bass to a whole new level when it comes to fast bass, or how quick the woofer can respond. There is nothing better on the market than what these subwoofers have to offer. So yeah, the double troubles are bad to the bone, and you guys are gonna love what these things can do throughout this guide. Now, as much as I do love open baffle bass, there are times when I enjoy dating the other options. While ported subs do have their place, especially when it comes to home theater applications, I prefer the sound of a sealed subwoofer for music playback. While working on this concept of this video, I reached out to Arendal to see if they were interested in playing with Thunder, and boy oh boy did they ever deliver. Folks, meet the 1723 2S. Dual drivers, double the fun, and packed with modern features that won me over in no time. Best of all, these subs are incredibly user-friendly. Here's the kicker. You won't find a gazillion knobs and dials on the back of this sub. The plate amp is refreshingly minimal. Why is that, you ask? Because, my audiophile compadres, the times, they are a-changing. Everything you need to adjust and integrate these subs into your room can now be done from your listening chair using nothing more than the phone that is in your pocket. How about that? All right, before we tackle setting up our subs, the first thing that we need to understand is what our main speakers are doing in the room. So, after a quick installation of REW, choosing our mic and calibration file, selecting our DAC for playback, we are ready to take our first measurement. I know some of you folks might have hoped for more details on setting up REW, but don't worry, I already covered this in much more detail in the Soundshed series. Those are the videos that you can check out later after watching this, and I'll leave all the links that you need down below. Anyway, place your microphone in the listening position and take your first measurement of the left speaker only. After taking this shot, repeat the process and select the right channel, and this time you should end up with something that looks something like this. In this example, we are looking at what is known as an in-room frequency response. You can see these speakers play down to about 45 Hertz, and that's really important to understand as we dial in our subwoofers. Essentially, this frequency sets the bar we are reaching for with bass, and depending on the speakers or the room, this bar will either be higher or lower. Another thing to consider, and it might make sense as to why we took left and right measurements, if your room isn't perfectly symmetrical, that bar that you're trying to reach might be higher on one side than it is on the other. Either way, let's take a quick break and see how these mains sound without the help of any subwoofers. Remember folks, headphones on for this demo, and here we go. When it comes to setting up one subwoofer, a common method that I see all the time is placing the sub in the corner of the room. While you are free to do whatever you like, I'm going to be the first to throw a fit that placing one sub in the corner of the room is probably my least favorite places to put a sub, especially if you care about clean and articulate bass. While we are dealing with sound pressure and for the most part, hard to localize information, I will tell you that for me, there is nothing more distracting or annoying than a bunch of bass energy bunched up in a corner of a room. Now look, I get it, I really do. The vast majority of you fine folks don't have a dedicated listening room, and for practical reasons, having a sub out of the way makes all the sense in the world, and that's totally fine. As for this video, this is for audiophiles who want audiophile bass, and without apologizing, I'm not even going to waste our time spending 1 second on corner placement for a subwoofer. For me, it sounds awful, and for what I'm after, pulling a sub deeper into the room or moving it around into position when you want to listen to music is worth all of the effort. Position number 1, smack dab in the middle of the room, right between the main speakers. You guys hear that? That was a sound of any credibility that I had left going, whew, right out the window. I know, for a long list of valid reasons, starting with room mode interaction, higher chances of the sub sitting in a null, lack of boundary reinforcement, phase interference, and so much more on paper, the middle of the room is not the best place to be plopping a sub down. But you know what? My experience over many years of doing this tells me otherwise. For one, both of the subs that we're working with today are serious subwoofers. They are insanely powerful and can hit incredibly low without the help of boundary reinforcement. Not only that, who says I wanted boundary reinforcement to start with? Heck, the entire point of lots and getting speakers off the wall is to get away from this problem in the first place. So yeah, entertain me. Try it and let's see what you think. And with the Arendal 1723, we have our subwoofer in position with REW up and running. And again, let's fire off another measurement and see how the sub is interacting with the room. Now, the beauty of the 1723 is without having to get up and mess around with the plate amps on the back of the subwoofers, I can stay back at the mic location, fire up the app, and within seconds start dialing in the subwoofers. Since we already know where our mains are dropping off, we're going to go ahead and try 45 Hertz on the app as our crossover point. As for volume, it doesn't really matter right now, but let's go ahead and try around 8 dB on the app and see where we land. All right, so a couple of things here. First of all, 45 Hertz looks like it's gonna be right on the money, but clearly we need a lot more volume to match our mains. As we look at our overlay and compare the output of the sub to the output of the mains, let's make some adjustments. After jumping into the app and simply increasing the volume a little bit at a time, I landed on this, which if we look at it again with the overlay, is much closer to where we need to be. Now, this looks pretty good, but there is one thing that I don't love about it, which is the subs are playing a little bit too much into the mains. Is this a problem? Not for Arendal, it's not. Firing up the app, I can simply change the crossover slope of the sub within a matter of seconds, with options of 6 dB per octave, 12 dB per octave, 18 dB per octave, and 24 dB per octave. This makes it a breeze to get that sub to play perfectly into the mains without any overlap. So, going back to this shot, which happened to have the slope at 18 dB per octave, we can see by changing it to 24 dB per octave, it does exactly what I was looking for and keeps that sub off the back of the mains. All right, so this last measurement is a great place to start listening. By all means, you do need to pay attention to phase, but without getting into the weeds, phase is really fine-tuning and harder to explain than it is to dial in. The simplest way to look at it is kind of like this. Adjusting phase ensures that the subwoofer and main speaker's waveforms align, preventing cancellation or reinforcement that could create an uneven bass response. The goal is to make the cones of the woofers, sub, and speakers move in sync at the crossover frequency. So when I work on phase, which is typically the last step for me, I'll just take measurements as I move the phase dial on the plate amp, or again, with these Arendals, change the phase in the application. Trust me, as you make your adjustments, you will know beyond a shadow of a doubt when the crossover point between the mains and the subs are out of phase. So, after our phase is ironed out, this is the final frequency response that we have to work with. As you can see, even with this one subwoofer pulled deep into the room, we have deep bass all the way down to 20 Hertz, and yes, as you can clearly see, we happen to have a little bit more help down there with my room picking up some gain at 20 Hertz. And now that I'm thinking about it, let's give this configuration a listen and see how it sounds. Remember folks, headphones on for this demo, and here we go. Now, with two subwoofers, things get really interesting, and for me, this can be a game changer for top-tier bass response. First, the subs are now sharing the load, so neither of them have to work as hard. Second, the response of the room will be more even, and the bass integration will be much better with your mains. For this, let's grab our double trebles and try placing them just behind the mains. About a foot or two is a great starting point. Also, try positioning the subs either on the inside or outside of the speakers. If your room is really wide, the subs on the outside might be the way to go, but in most rooms like mine, just on the inside, right behind the speakers, is probably going to give the best results. Either way, every room is different, but don't obsess over this. Just make sure they are within a couple of feet away from the mains, and you're going to be fine. After we get a rough position of the subwoofers, let's fire up REW and let's get to work. Let's start with the volume at 12 o'clock and our crossover at 50 Hertz. And just like that, we can see that we are already in the ballpark, but for my money, we do need to bring the volume down a little bit, and we also need to lower our crossover point. All right, folks, 4 clicks down on both the volume and the crossover settings. Let's take another shot and see how this looks. As you can see in this overlay, we now have a very linear response and perfect follow-away into our mains. For folks who are worried that we are going to be a little bit too lean on bass, do not forget about that second subwoofer, because that extra gain is going to raise this low end. And I'm almost certain after listening, we might actually need to bring the volume down even more. But the good news is this: you will be very close to your target, and using this method will cut the time in half of just guessing along the way using only your ears. Either way, after taking measurements of the first sub, you are ready to move on to the second subwoofer, and the process is the exact same. If your room is symmetrical, you literally can just copy the settings on the first plate amp and you are off to the races. Now, in the event where your room is not symmetrical, you will need to work a little bit harder with the crossover point and the volume to get the sub dialed in, but again, this is actually a huge advantage of two subwoofers in that you can actually smooth out the response in odd-shaped rooms much easier than having one subwoofer to work with. And of course, with these plate amps, there is so much more that we can do to change this curve that I won't be getting into today, but let me just give one example to help illustrate how amazing these amps really are. With these toggle switches on the amp, I can change damping factors and even engage a parametric EQ to help tame bass modes in the room. While there are a lot of controls and options on these plate amps that might discourage some folks, others who aren't afraid to dive in and learn will end up with great bass in any situation regardless of the room's layout or size. All right, demo time. Checking out the double trebles. One thing that I want you to focus on is how well these subs blend in with the mains. Compared to the single Arendal, it's very clear in the clips just how much that 20 hertz peak that we had with that Arendal is helping in that placement, and you won't get as much lower end pressure with the double trebles. However, the bass that you are getting in these clips is very quick and it is very clean. All right, headphones on, let's go. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I dig how that sounds. Let me know what you're hearing in the comments section. I'll certainly be curious. So, that's one configuration for two subwoofers that's ideal, especially when using open baffle subs. But again, let's take a moment and at least mention another option for those who want to travel off-road and get creative. Of course, depending on your room and what you have around you, this might not work, but you can try placing a pair of subs to the left and to the right of your listening position. Now, I will say this setup did not work for me with the double trebles, and I think that a large part of that is open baffle bass really needs a lot of room to breathe, and in this particular setup, it was a no-go. However, with the Arendals, all day long, and it sounded so good, I simply copied this placement, when I set up 4 subwoofers, which we're going to get to in just a minute. Anyhow, for those who want to try this, this is how I did it. With our 2 Arendals, we will begin by taking a shot of the left sub and then also the right sub. We will overlay the measurement with our mains, and just as before, we will begin making adjustments. And again, because these Arendal subs are all controlled by the app, making these changes is quick and easy to do. And again, because we already know where our mains are dropping off in the room, it's pretty simple to start with the volume and work on the crossover settings, let's say starting around 45 Hertz on the app. After a quick shot of the left subwoofer, this is where we land, and it brings up a great point that we really need to understand. Even though we have selected 45 Hertz as the low pass on this sub, you can see, based on the room and the sub position, we actually have bass all the way out to the mid-60s. Taking a look at this overlay, we can clearly see this would be a mess and it would not sound very good. The point is this, without taking these measurements, it would have been a heck of a lot harder to get this dialed in perfectly. Lucky for us, with some quick adjustments on the app, bringing the crossover all the way down to 30 Hertz and lowering the volume, this is where we ended up. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I think this looks very good, and it's a great starting point to get to listening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now let's get to cooking with some real fire. So in this example, we are going to push the envelope and set up 4 subwoofers. I know for some of you this might seem like a daunting task, but it's really not as hard as you might think. In fact, since we already dialed in both pairs of these subs in the previous section, the truth is our work is already done. And the only thing that we need to do is take one final shot of the left and right mains with all 4 subwoofers. I do think that it would be wise to double check phase settings one last time, but in my room, this is where we landed as the final frequency response with all 4 subs playing, and I didn't need to make one adjustment to get this dialed in. So yeah, if you can manage 1 subwoofer, you can definitely manage 2, 4, or as many as your audiophile heart desires. It is all rinse and repeat, and with the help of REW, anyone can have great sounding bass in just about any room within reason. All right, who wants to hear the sound clips with the 4 subs? I know that I do, but since it's been a minute since we heard the other demos, why don't we just cut these all up in order so you can clearly hear the changes in bass as we add more subs? Sounds good? All right, my friends, headphones on, let's go. And there you have it. That's it. Super easy. This was not difficult to do, and with the help of REW, I think that setting up subwoofers is not only simple, but it's kind of fun because you're learning how this interaction between the mains and the subs work. And I gotta say, after doing this for so many years, anytime that I get in subs or mains to work with, I bust out that microphone and I have a blast. And I know that if you're willing to give this a shot, you're going to have a lot of fun doing it as well. And the best part is, as you could tell by the sound clips, it sounds awesome when you get everything dialed in and it's not this big boomy mess where you're just guessing and you don't even know what any of these dials do or knobs do. Using REW in this very simple, easy to follow method, I can promise you, you will have reference bass in no time at all. And with that, I will see you subwoofer loving audiophiles in the next video.